Welcome, everyone. This explainer is brought to you by The Other Way Marshall Consulting. Today, we're going to explore a really different way of thinking about conflict, one that completely redefines what it means to win.
So let's start with a really foundational question. What does it actually mean to win a conflict? Is it about dominating an opponent or proving you're right? Or is it something else entirely?
Here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll redefine the real goal of any confrontation. Then, we'll look at the old way versus a new strategic shift. After that, we'll get into how it works in practice, and we'll finish up by looking at your strategic choice. All right, let's dive into the most important part right away, redefining the objective. Because you can't really win until you know exactly what you're trying to accomplish.
You see, the entire philosophy of The Other Way boils down to this one single non-negotiable principle: a results-driven focus on one goal: get home safely. That is the only metric that matters.
Now, it is so important to understand this. This isn't about being passive. It's about being what we call forensically efficient. You avoid a fight not because you're scared, but because any engagement that doesn't serve that main objective is just a complete waste of your resources.
To really appreciate this new way of thinking, let's talk about the alternative, the old way, the one most of us are taught to expect, which is just a direct collision. This really breaks down the problem with that old-school attribute-based conflict. It relies on you hoping you're stronger, or faster, or more skilled than the other guy. It turns every conflict into a contest. And here's the thing, even when you win, you still lose time, you lose energy, and you always risk injury. And that brings us to the very heart of this philosophy. The Other Way is about a fundamental shift, away from relying on your attributes and toward focusing purely on the results.
This slide shows the difference so clearly. On the left, you've got the conventional way, a high-cost collision. It's a gamble. On the right, you have the other way. I love this phrase from the source material, the physics of necessity. It's not about being better than them. It's about achieving your goal, period.
The mindset is beautifully simple, isn't it? It completely removes your ego from the equation. The focus becomes binary. Did you get home safely, yes or no? That is the only question that needs an answer. Okay, so this all sounds good in theory, right? But how do you actually put it into action? Well, that's what this next section is all about, taking these ideas from theory to practice in any kind of space.
This quote from a student really just nails the power of this mental shift. He says, "I realized I didn't need to win the argument or the fight, I just needed to get home. That clarity changed everything." That's the aha moment, right there.
In a physical situation, the method is simple and it's repeatable. It's called CWT. You connect to the opponent's structure, you wrap to gain control and leverage, and then you use a takedown simply to clear the path. The goal here isn't to get into a long fight on the ground. It's just to create an exit so you can leave safely.
And this exact same thinking applies everywhere else. In a verbal conflict, maybe you pivot the conversation, or you de-escalate, or you just set a hard, non-negotiable boundary. The key is always that mental shift. You stop asking, how do I beat them? And you start asking, what is my objective here?
Understanding the theory is a great first step, but to make this stuff second nature when you're under real pressure, you have to master the mechanics. For anyone who's serious about doing just that, The Other Way offers a mentorship program. It's pretty comprehensive. It includes 10 weeks of live virtual training with an experienced instructor, and it's followed by two-hour hands-on physical practice sessions. Now, the next intake is limited to only 10 students to make sure everyone gets personalized instruction. If you're interested, the link for that is in the description. All right, let's move into our final section. We're going to address some of the most common questions people have and really solidify the strategic choice that this whole philosophy presents.
So one of the first questions people ask is this just pacifism with a different name? And the answer to that is a very clear and definite no.
This isn't about refusing to use force on moral grounds. It's about using strategic force. And that means making a very calculated choice to use the absolute minimum amount of energy and force you need to achieve your objective and nothing more. It's all about efficiency, not ideology. Okay, but what about the most critical scenario? What if avoidance just is not an option? What if you truly cannot get away? Then you go through, the other way doesn't just mean the way away. It means finding the alternative to that messy head-on collision. If an exit doesn't exist, your objective simply becomes to dismantle your opponent's structure just enough to create one.
And this really brings us to the core tenet of the entire philosophy, a powerful reminder of its main principle: over, under, around, or through. There is always a way.
And so I'll leave you with this question to think about. The next time you face a conflict, whether it's verbal, mental, or physical, are you going to choose the high cost of a collision, or are you going to find the other way?
On behalf of the Other Way Marshall Consulting, thank you for watching.